Hey, what's up guys? MTG Tournament Grinder here, and welcome to this week's episode of Modern. But before we dive into the gameplay, I have a couple of exciting announcements. I have made a Twitch account. I actually did my first live stream yesterday, and I plan on streaming Modern Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. and also potentially Pauper on Fridays, also at 7 p.m. And besides just creating a Twitch account, I also made a Patreon account. So if you guys really enjoy what I do and you are so inclined to support me, you now have the means to do so. And if things continue in the direction they're already headed, I would love to start treating this channel more like a full-time commitment. So when that happens, hopefully I'll be able to start working with more people, branching out a little bit, and bringing you a greater variation of content. So if you're already subscribed on YouTube, go ahead and head over to Twitch. You can follow me on there. And also if you're interested, you can go check out Patreon. But let's go ahead and jump back into the match. So I am on a mold of 6, probably a 6 that I wasn't happy with judging by how slow the start was. And my opponent actually was on the play as well as keeping 7, so it feels like he is already pretty far ahead. I must have top decked that Mox Opal. Or perhaps it's just safer in my hand. But against Elves, there's nothing he can do to my Mox Opal. Not in his main board anyways. Ballista for 1. That is my 3rd artifact. So now I have Metalcraft. Ancient Stirrings, perhaps? Yep. Always a good play. And of course, there's a Hardened Scales in there. I feel like I rarely cast an Ancient Stirrings where I don't put a Hardened Scales on the bottom. Okay, in my hand is Arcbound, Steel Overseer, Darksteel Citadel. I mean, I think because there's an Arcbound Ravager in my hand, yeah. Take the Mox Opal. Because that kind of, I wouldn't say it combos with the Arcbound Ravager, but next turn, play the Ravager. Tap the Opal that's already on the battlefield, sacrifice it to Ravager. Play the new Opal, you know, that whole trick. And it looks like I was willing to kill my my Walking Ballista, just like that, just to kill his Elvish Mystic. I mean, whatever you can do to keep the Elf player from going off. But I can't help but feel like if I had waited a turn, cast that Arcbound Ravager, put a bunch of counters on the Ballista, that I probably would win. Yeah, I think that was the play. Because I'm not really worried about like board wipes or spot removal from Elves and the main board. So if I go all in, sacking every artifact I have to the Arcbound, sack it to itself to put it on the Walking Ballista, kill his whole board when he has 1 or 2 cards in hand, man, I think that would have been the play. But, you know, Steel Overseer's never a bad card. Not too shabby, really. An Arcbound with 3 counters on it. But that's without Hardened Scales. That's that Ruins of Oran Reef, that land. Tap, put a counter on target colorless creature that entered the battlefield this turn. And there's the Hardened Scales. Better late than never. And so with a Hardened Scales on the battlefield and an Arcbound Worker, let me count this. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I don't think it's lethal. But if I swung and he didn't block and I sacked my whole board, forgive my counting like that, but I'm pretty sure it's 16 damage. Ooh, I was counting before the Steel Overseer's activation. I was not counting that. Okay, so 5. And with Hardened Scales on the battlefield, it really adds up quickly. I sack the Arcbound Worker to the Arcbound Ravager. Okay, here we go. 7. Because it's in lumps of 2. 9, 11, And when you go modular to modular, I think that's what I'm explaining to my opponent here. It's like, I'll activate the ability on the Arcbound Ravager, sacrifice a creature, an artifact creature, so I get 2 counters from that. And then the Arcbound Worker goes to the graveyard, modular triggers, and it's not 6 that come back, it's actually 7. For a grand total of 20. Nice. Several times while doing commentary, I'm watching my match, and there's a situation like that, where I had lethal, my opponent says no blocks, and then I just say, okay, damage, because I didn't count it out. So I'm pleased to see that I'm not making that mistake anymore. And the time is upon us where we shall now discuss the sideboard plans. As far as the sideboarding plans for my own deck, Hardened Scales, I really don't have a lot going on here. I just brought in 2 copies of Dismember. Elves can depend heavily on its first couple of creatures, whether it's like an Elvish Mystic or a Heritage Druid plus double Nettle Sentinel. Those kind of hands, you want to have a Dismember to hit that Heritage Druid, or to do whatever you have to do, really, to stop them from going off. Because once they go off and they can just make a bajillion mana, and pump with Azuri and cast all their spells, it's pretty much game over. And the 2 cards I took out was both copies of Throne of Geth. There are some matchups where I take it out and I regret it, because I end up needing the flyers from Hangerback Walker particularly badly, and Throne of Geth is one of my not so many sack outlets. I've got a playset of Arcbound Ravagers, Phyrexia's Core, the land, and then I've got 2 Throne of Geths and an Evolutionary Leap. So in matchups where I don't think I'll be depending on my flyers very much, I don't mind taking out the Throne of Geths. Although I wouldn't take them out if I was playing against fairies or something. Now, as for my opponent's sideboarding plans, I noticed that they brought in 3 copies of Reclamation Sage. So this card is just insanely powerful against artifact decks. It is a 3-drop, 2/1 Elf Shaman that says when it enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So he's going to use it to blow up my best cards, whether it's an Arcbound Ravager, trying to force my hand to get rid of it, where I can't put alt-in counters on an Inkmoth or something like that. The fact that it's a 3-drop makes it a good hit from Collected Company. And on top of everything else, it's also an elf, so it also gets buffed by all your lords when you're trying to go for your huge swing. Overall, an A+, even S tier sideboard card against me. He also brought in a single copy of Fracturing Gust. Now this card is good against any artifact deck, but against my deck where I have the potential to make so many tokens that are all artifacts, Fracturing Gust has the potential to be absolutely insane. He could easily gain 30 life if he hits 10 tokens or 10 artifacts, and I've had games where I put 18 counters on a Hangerback Walker, and I have way more than 10 artifacts on the battlefield. So if he draws this card, it could absolutely win him the game in a heartbeat. And I think that about wraps it up for the sideboarding plans. So without further ado, we'll get back to game 2 and see what is going on. And we are back with game 2. So I won the first one just with a lucky Hardened Scales off the top of my library, really. But this is kind of a scary matchup, so we'll see how it goes in game 2. My opponent is on the play again. So revealing Heritage Druid, playing Heritage Druid. That is not a good sign. Yeah, I thought I saw that in my hand. Definitely worth using a Dismember if it means he can't go off. If he had Nettle Sentinels in his hand, that would be particularly scary. But really, any other green creature, green 1-drops specifically, would have been nuts there. A single Elvish Mystic. Interesting. So maybe he didn't have the hand that was already prepared to go off. He was just gearing up to draw into it. Either way, getting rid of that Heritage Druid I think was the right play. Meanwhile, on my side of the board, not really doing a whole lot. Arcbound Worker. Another Dismember. My goodness. Well, that's my whole sideboarding plan. And I am at 12 life. I'm not sure how I feel about that. The first one hitting the Heritage Druid made sense, but I'm a little worried that the hitting that Elvish Mystic with the second Dismember is actually going to be quite costly. Yikes. So he gets his 1/1 from Dwynen's Elite, passes the turn, and I kind of need to start really playing some good cards soon. Well, there's one of them. It looks like I'm missing my land drops now. This is certainly a less than ideal situation, but if I get to untap with my Steel Overseer, I do have that Blinkmoth Nexus, I think it is, so I don't think my clock is going to be anywhere near as fast as his. I'll have to draw into a faster clock, but I have something going on. Although, it is not looking good. Willing Jar gives me a little bit of security in case he has a sideboard card. Reclamation Sage or something like that to try and take care of my Steel Overseer. So at least I get to untap with him one time. Meanwhile, my opponent is kind of running out of cards. Shucks though, another Dwynen's Elite. His board is getting so wide, and his clock is getting... well, how much damage does he actually have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Are the Dwynen Elites 2/1s? I know I'm being silly. I think they're 2/1s. Either way, he's got a lot more damage on board than I do. Thank the Lord. Got a land. And it's an Inkmoth. So maybe if I draw into an Arcbound Ravager before I die, maybe then I could win with Inkmoth. Hangerback Walker with no sack outlet. Pretty sad day. Darn. And this is just a bad place to be. I ended up kind of taking the turn off as far as being aggressive, so I could develop my board state. I was counting up how much damage I could do last time, like as though I was going to swing, but his board is not something I can swing into, really. My only creature I could possibly have swung with is the Blinkmoth Nexus, and it's one of my very few lands, so it was important. I'm wondering exactly what I need to draw to get out of this. If I draw an Arcbound Ravager, I can't play it and also activate and swing with Inkmoth Nexus. I need to have 2 more draw steps. One of them needs to be an Arcbound Ravager and one of them needs to be a land. And then maybe, just maybe, I can win. Oof. I don't think I'm going to have 2 more turns. Zuri is a pretty strong card. Although, I think because of Heritage Druid and the fact that he tapped a couple of green creatures, he doesn't have enough mana and also enough creatures to swing for lethal now. Pass the turn, but once he untaps with all his creatures and he can pump twice, I'm pretty sure that he just wins. Well, I must think I've got something. I'm not conceding yet. I feel like sometimes when you don't concede in the face of adversity, it can be a good thing, because you have answers and you may draw your way out of it, such and so forth. But there are times when when I watch myself here and I don't concede and I'm thinking, what are you doing? Like, this seems pretty obviously over. But Mama didn't raise no quitter, so I'm gonna see it through to the end. Which I believe is just around the corner. I just have to realize how dead I am. Pass the turn. He swings and pumps with Zuri. I think just the one time. And if he has a land in his hand, then he doesn't have to tap any He doesn't have to tap any creatures with Heritage Druid. Yeah, I think we are discussing just how dead I am. Well, I bet you I'm already thinking about game 3. Yeah, he did have a land in hand. So he bumps, everything has trample and is huge. For whatever reason, I'm still doing the math. I'm still like double checking. But the pile on the top of the screen, on my opponent's right hand side, those are all like swinging for 5. And the tokens and the other guys are all swinging for 4. So I block as much as I possibly can. 6 rolls over, plus another 5. Yeah, I'm already dead. So at least I saw it through to the end. But that game, I just never really got off the ground. I never drew an Arcbound Ravager. But we'll have to see how this goes in game 3. And we are back with game 3. Always goes to game 3 with Elves, it seems. Definitely a good matchup. Looks like I kept 7 this time and my opponent mulled the 6. Welding Jar, Forest, can't complain. Turn 1 Hardened Scales plus a 0 drop is promising. It would be better if that was a Mox Opal, I think. Although you may soon find out if he's got a removal spell or something, that Welding Jar will come in pretty handy. Ooh, missed my second land drop. I mean, I think I would keep this hand any day of the week. A green source with double Hardened Scales, even if it's a 1-lander, the odds of you drawing into more lands are pretty good. Nice. And indeed, I did draw into more lands. Walking Ballista for 1, but instead it's 3. Oh my goodness. Yeah, a lot of these creature-based matchups are entirely decided on whether or not I draw an early Walking Ballista. It's that way against spirits too. If I draw an early Walking Ballista and I can just kind of kill their whole board when they only have 2 or 3 cards in hand, it's really rough. Yeah. Before he plays any spells, you want to swing first. Because then your spell untaps it, and you have an untapped Nettle Sentinel instead. So, I mean, it seems obvious, but when I tried to play Elves and Pauper, I made that mistake at first. Kind of no matter how obvious it is, it's still something you have to be aware of, and that you have to, like, actually think about. Alright, well, he is rebuilding. What else can I do here? If I had an Arcbound Ravager, I would probably sack the Welding Jar, and then sack the Ravager to itself and put 6 counters on the Ballista, and continue just to kill his whole board. Not a bad option. I feel like I saw a peek of an Arcbound Ravager in my hand from earlier. So maybe, just maybe, I'm thinking I would rather sack the Hangerback Walker next turn. That doesn't seem nearly as good as putting a bunch of counters on the Walking Ballista. Well, I guess I could do both. I sack the Hangerback Walker, do the Arcbound Ravager, and then I put that many more counters on the Ballista. Okay, I mean, that seems good. Because if I draw a land, I can activate Hangerback Walker's ability. Pay 1, tap, put a counter on it. But it's 3 instead, so it goes up to 6. Play an Arcbound Ravager for 3 counters. Oh man, that could be bonkers. I think that would be lethal. If I have a land and a Ravager right now, I could easily sack my way into just shooting him 20 times with Ballista. Okay, that's part of it. No land per turn. I mean, I'm not being presented with a super scary clock, so I could wait one more turn. It'll be that much more explosive for it. Because sacking modular to modular, and then an even larger hangerback walker with even more dudes, each one of which is giving me 3 counters, it's like, that hangerback walker alone, if I had an Arcbound Ravager, it and its 6 tokens would be enough for to swing for 21, or to shoot for 21. 22 technically, because there's already a counter on the Walking Ballista. I get the names Walking Ballista and Hangerback Walker so confused. I apologize if I've mixed up those 2 terms so far. Interesting. So Court of Calling is X or less. He originally had a 2-drop in mind, and then I guess while thumbing through his deck saw Heritage Druid and thought that was a better call. I mean, if he has an Azuri, I think he's probably right that the Heritage Druid is likely to be a better call. I mean, double Nettle Sentinel and a Heritage Druid, that's the nuts right there. Taps all 3 of those, plays a green spell, it untaps both Nettle Sentinels, and assuming the green spell he played was a creature, then he has a 3rd creature that he can tap to continue to go off. And he does still have 3 cards in his hand, so I imagine all 3 of those cards are probably going to come down this turn. So I have 1 counter left on the Ballista. Actually, this is an interesting part, where we have a judge call and everything. I've already made it clear that I want to shoot the Heritage Druid at the earliest possible time, but that is a mana ability. We're asking the judge now. I think that's right.
No,
We're going to judge right here.
What's a mana ability?
Can I respond to Heritage Druid?
Heritage Druid, yeah, so it is a mana ability. You can't, it's a mana ability, it's just not a tap ability. If anything cares about that, but it is a mana ability. You can't respond to him
tapping.
Tapping. Yeah.
So my first available opportunity would be in response to whatever spell he uses, that he casts with the mana.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Whenever the next thing
Short
happens.
answer, yes.
Right. Okay. So I think I asked the judge slightly the wrong question, but that's okay. We're about to figure it out. So he plays Collected Company, and now I'm thinking with Collected Company on the stack, I would like to shoot the Heritage Druid. And what makes this complicated is that we don't actually realize that the Nettle Sentinel's untapping goes onto the stack. So here's being pointed out. Because I had let my opponent untap his Nettle Sentinels and then re-tap them, like all while I was trying to shoot the Heritage Druid, and that's because I was responding to the Collected Company going onto the stack. But what I was unaware of and what I needed to respond to was the untap trigger from the first Nettle Sentinel to untap. Whenever that trigger goes onto the stack. We're asking the judge now. Just for posterity, for future reference. Hey Aslan, I think I have another question for you. So, cast Collected Company,
Yeah.
It's a green spell.
Yeah.
Does a trigger come up on the stack to untap the Nettle Sentinels?
Yeah, I don't.
So I can respond to the Coco before he
Yeah, the
untaps?
trigger goes onto the stack, so you can respond to the trigger being put onto the stack.
Well, I will put that in your hands on how you want to handle the situation. I would like to have done it at the earliest possible opportunity, but we weren't sure.
So he allowed the Collected Company I'm sorry. In response to these untapped, he shot Heritage Druid, and then I said I was tapping these again for Heritage Druid's ability.
Okay.
So I'm trying to. So it's like, I'm trying to kill this thing as
these are
early
all
as
taps.
possible.
Yeah. So
cast this.
So what I would
It was a
say-
mana ability. I couldn't respond.
All right. So this is a little complicated. I mean, so since this is regular Ariel, I would say that rewind to the triggers being on the stacks. But since this is regular Ariel, this isn't how you do this at all. combo Ariel, but so just rewind to the triggers being put onto the stack since
I see.
you have a question about how
I
hope
know.
that's not too unfortunate.
No, I understand. I want to play a fair game. I
Right.
know what the 6th card from the top of my deck is.
That's what it was going to be otherwise, right? That's
Yes.
like nothing about that has
No.
changed. That's fine with
Okay.
me.
So in that case, these are on the trigger. Or these are on the stack. This is also on the stack.
Right.
So you're responding, or you're
I'm
yeah,
responding to
these,
technically to those
yeah.
triggers.
And so in that case, I do not actually have 3 elves to tap. So these do untap. This dies. I have just.
Coco
I have none
resolves.
floating. Yeah, I have none floating.
Right.
Okay.
That was really complicated. And there was just kind of a misunderstanding. And on my part, a little bit of a lack of knowledge.
No, I don't want.
I wouldn't have pushed Looks like I could see a couple of Elvish visionaries in there.
I'll play Archdrake.
An Archdruid and a visionary.
Yeah.
Pretty scary stuff. So he draws another card in hand. And Archdruid is a Lorn, so now his Nettle Sentinels are 3/3s. My goodness. I'm kind of worried now that I don't have a Walking Ballista. I was so sure that next turn I was just going to play an Arcbound Ravager, sack the Hangerback Walker and all of its tokens, and then put the counters on the Ballista. But I don't think that's an option anymore.
Is that good for you? Just getting us a layer or something?
So if I block, if I trade one of the Nettle Sentinels with my Arcbound Worker, first of all, that's good in case he draws more Heritage Druids. Not having 2 Nettle Sentinels makes it a lot less busted. And because of double Hardened Scales, it's not 3, but 5 counters that would be moved over to the Hangerback Walker. And I definitely do have an Arcbound in my hand. I could clearly see it just now. So now's my chance to put 11 Thopters, or to put 11 counters on my Hangerback Walker that'll make 11 Thopters. Yeah, I think that's right. So 5 move over. I take 6. Yep. And now I'm gonna have jump blockers for days. As long as he doesn't have Zuri and give all of his creatures trample, then I think I'm looking okay here. I'm not sure what's in his hand. Looks like at least 1 land. Yeah, 1 Blooming Marsh. If I hadn't have shot his Heritage Druid and just let him combo off, he probably still would not have killed me, and I would still have my Walking Ballista. I would still be doing the original plan. And I would absolutely have like definitive lethal this turn. I think instead, I'm just going to have 11 1/1s that my opponent is going to think, oh, well, now what do I do? But it'll have another turn, or 2 even. Oh man, this is such a cool part of the deck. Whenever you can make 11 dudes. I think I've made as many as like 18. Ended up with 18 counters on a Hangerback Walker. Sacrificed it. Next turn, untap with a Steel Overseer and put 2 counters on each of them. So now they're all 3/3s. I think that was my most devastating win that I've ever had with this deck. It was similar to this board state. Except no Hangerback Walker. Or excuse me, no Steel Overseer this time. So when he passes back, they won't be summoning sick. I'll swing for 11, take him to 9. Well, that's if I have all my attackers still. I'm at 12 life, so if he drops like another Lord and swings out, I'm forced to block. And that reduces my capacity to swing back next turn. It reduces my my number of attackers so much that I won't even be able to kill him. So it's an interesting pickle. Mystic. And what I really don't want to see is more Lords, so the fact that he just played a Mystic is not too bad. Yikes. Reclamation Sage. And he's naming the welding jar. So this guy has made very few mistakes, at least that I can see so far. But I think that naming the welding jar was incorrect. I think the play there was to force me to sack my Ravager. Or something. The welding jar seems like the least interesting target. It's certainly not one of the Thopters. My opponent was right about that. I think the target there was the Ravager. But if he hits the Ravager, in response I sack the welding jar, goes to 9, and then sack it, and put, yeah. I still would have ended up with lethal this turn. So swing for 11, and then dump 9, 10, 11, more, 10, 11 more counters. Yeah, I'm going all in. He's tapped out, no cards in hand. Yeah, a little sloppy, but move all the counters over here. 6, 6, so 18, 25, 20, plenty. Whew. Well, Elves is no pushover, man. That was some really good magic. And as usual, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy content like this, you can let me know in the comments below, or by subscribing to my YouTube channel. You can let me know through Patreon. Also, go check me out on Twitch. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week with some more Modern.